Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has suggested that tax hikes are coming. He outlined the supplementary budget today. COVID-19 and the rescue package announced by the President earlier means that more money will be spent this year at a time when less money is coming in the form of tax, creating an even bigger debt burden, which is already a threat to the entire economy. Now, regarding taxes, he said we expect to miss our tax target for this year by over 300 billion rand. How important is that? Let's speak to the man at the helm of the body, trying to get in as much revenue for government as possible, and that is SARS Commissioner Kieswetter. Commissioner, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Missing the target by 300 billion. How serious is that? It sounds devastating given the previous sort of gaps we've seen in expectations and then what comes in.
Absolutely, it is significant, particularly in the sense, Francis, that government has had to increase its expenditure specifically for COVID and also for granting tax relief measures. And that obviously incurs an additional expense burden. And then because of the contraction of the economy and also the unintended consequences of lockdown, we have seen a significant decline in a number of areas. So, for example, we see the job market being impacted, and we can see that in terms of the number of tax directives that are applied for retrenchments. That's approaching 80,000, with an impact of just R1 billion. In total, employment taxes are down 11% year on year, making up almost 13 billion of that shortfall. Then in terms of other economic activities, we see in three areas the impact of the downward trending economy. In terms of consumption taxes, domestic VAT, that's down 16% year on year. Import taxes, duties and VAT, that accounts for a 26% decline year on year. And excise duties down 42%. That combined effect of 33 billion. We don't yet see the impact on corporate taxes because there's a delayed impact, but that will also happen. So the big concern we have is the loss of jobs and the loss of economic capacity, because that will make the recovery even so much harder.
Yeah. Many of the analysts we've spoken to tonight have said, the finance minister was saying we need to therefore tighten our belt. We need to spend less, but no real details on how that's going to happen. Are you personally concerned about the debt crisis in South Africa, about his warning that we could even face a sovereign debt crisis?
Well, anyone who is not concerned about the debt crisis really doesn't have South Africa's interest at heart. We've seen a shift from debt to GDP ratio from just over 65% in the February budget, now to almost 82%. Our debt service cost has gone from just over 4.2% to 5%. You can't grow yourself out of spending all of your money just on debt. And the risk and the warning that the minister gives is if we don't rein in our expenditure, if we don't reset our budget, the whole notion of a zero-based budget, if we don't redirect our costs from consumption to investment, then we are simply marching towards a sovereign debt crisis. And that happens when your total debt is larger than your total economy. And then you are on a hiding to nothing, and you never get yourself out of it. And we've seen countries in Latin America and elsewhere in the world, once you hit that, it just becomes so much harder. So now, while we still have time, the message from the minister is we are determined to stabilize our debt, to manage our expenditure, and obviously from our side to improve revenue collection so that we can close the jaws that eventually will devour us if we don't do that.
So talking about improved revenue collection, are more taxes coming? Can you tell us? I mean, how does this even get discussed between you and Treasury, for example?
So the minister has given very clear indication that in February that his first reaction is not to raise taxes. That obviously has to be reviewed now over the medium term, given where we are at the moment. But on the other side, we also have given a clear message that we are not collecting all the taxes that are due. We've seen a decline in general levels of compliance, people just becoming either negligent or careless, and some even losing faith in the tax system because of what we've seen over the years of state capture and corruption. But we also see some aggressive tax planning. We see wealthy and complex arrangements from high net worth individuals. We see international taxes being abused or very close to sailing to the wind when it gets to eroding our tax base and the abuse of transfer pricing. But we also see very concerning trends in criminal activities. We have seen an abuse by syndicates who defraud our VAT system. We see very deliberate defrauding of customs by under-declaring fraudulently the value of goods that are imported. So those are three areas we believe we will focus on in the coming years. We've already begun to do that in the turnaround of SARS. We will expand and increase the use of data, using more third-party and other data sources, and use artificial intelligence to help us detect and manage compliance far sooner. And then there's still a huge mountain of debt that taxpayers owe government, which we have to redouble our efforts to collect it. It will obviously be harder during this time of economic crisis, and whilst we have empathy for that, and government has also introduced tax measures, we would encourage taxpayers, rather than to go into default, to rather approach SARS so that we can put in place arrangements for those debt obligations to be fulfilled.
Commissioner, finally, what about the controversial sort of everyday taxes that were lost because of the cigarette sales ban, for example, liquor for a while? Did you have any opinion that you expressed to government at the time?
I don't have opinions. I measure my work in terms of hard data. And so the hard data shows that we have lost in total excise duties are down 42%. Of that, a component of over 6 billion is on specific excise duties, and that would be cigarettes and beer, alcohol and other products. The total effect of that loss, when you look at the downstream taxes, is 14 billion. So there has been a definite loss of tax revenues of up to 14 billion. And that is a concern, and obviously an area that we raise with government so that they consider that as they make decisions about the reopening of the economy.
All right. We appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much. That was SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter.